10,000 research and manufacturing jobs could land in Canada if Ottawa adds the Swedish fighter jet to its military fleet.
What we designed the system for is actually to be able to withstand the extreme max in terms of cold, so minus 40, minus 45.
The Gripen E operates with a new agile architecture system, which allows the aircraft to be upgraded with new tactics and new capabilities seamlessly.
We, as Saab, we are prepared to do that technology transfer to Canada and support that build-up.
3 weeks ago, Canada and the United States were still allies. Today, Canada just signed a $3.5 billion deal with a British company, and Washington was not warned in advance. No phone call, no courtesy briefing, no heads up to the Pentagon. And if you think that's just a business decision, you haven't been paying attention. Because what Canada just did could permanently change who controls the Arctic and who gets left out in the cold.
At a time when about 3/4 of Canada's military purchases come from the United States.
They are part of nation-building strategies to transform our economies.
For decades, Canada bought its military hardware from American companies. Fighters, engines, weapons systems, most of it came from US contractors, with US conditions attached. Washington liked it that way. It kept Canada close. It kept money flowing south. And it kept Canada dependent on American supply chains for its own national defense. That arrangement worked, until it didn't. When Donald Trump returned to the White House and started placing tariffs on Canadian goods, something shifted in Ottawa. The old trust began to crack. And Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, began asking a question that no Canadian leader had asked out loud in a generation. What happens if America is no longer a reliable partner? Carney's government made 3 moves in 1 week. First, they formally rejected extending the F-35 procurement timeline, ending years of on-again, off-again negotiations with Lockheed Martin. Second, they signed a framework agreement with Saab of Sweden to finalize the Canadian Gripen production deal, with assembly lines confirmed for Ontario.
It's important for Canada to have sovereign capability in Canada to do their own upgrades, to build parts of it, to do final assembly and tests. We, as Saab, we are prepared to do that technology transfer to Canada and support that build-up.
Third, and this is the one that landed hardest in Washington, they committed $3.5 billion to Rolls-Royce for a next-generation turbofan engine program, purpose-built for Arctic operations, with intellectual property rights remaining inside the Canada-UK partnership. One rejection. One commitment. One line that changed the defense map of North America. $3.5 billion is not a routine contract.
We are focusing quite heavily to make sure that Canada has all the information they need for the moment. And then it's up to Canada to decide.
It is larger than Canada's entire annual Coast Guard budget. It funds more than 4,000 high-skill aerospace jobs in Ontario and Quebec. It locks in a 25-year supply relationship with British industry. And it generates an estimated $9 billion in downstream economic activity through parts suppliers, maintenance contracts, and technology licensing, none of which flows to American firms. The engine itself has already completed more than 400 hours of Arctic environment testing at the Rolls-Royce facility in Derby, England. In those trials, it achieved a full cold start in 93 seconds at minus 52 degrees Celsius. The closest American alternative averaged 14 minutes under similar conditions. That gap, 93 seconds versus 14 minutes, is not a minor technical detail. In Arctic air defense, it is the difference between intercepting a threat and watching it pass unchallenged through Canadian airspace. For ordinary Canadians, this deal means jobs, and it means something less easy to measure. It means their country chose its own priorities over outside pressure. Production facilities in Ontario will hire directly. Supplier networks across 6 provinces will grow. Engineering graduates will have domestic career paths in advanced aerospace that did not exist 5 years ago. For communities near those facilities, the economic effect will be visible and lasting.
If Canada did not have the F-35, do you think that American planes would more often be in Canada?
That changes our defense capability, and as such, we have to figure out how we're going to replace that.
His comment reaching the head of Canada's Air Force.
Can we maintain our sovereign control of airspace without F-35s.
I would offer that Canadian presence in NORAD absolutely reduces the risk and increases Canada's autonomy and ability to defend itself. The F-35 is one of the capabilities that Canada has decided to procure.
For the Canadian economy broadly, the deal reduces reliance on a single foreign supplier for a critical national security asset. That kind of diversification has real value, especially when trade tensions with Washington remain unresolved and tariffs on Canadian exports are still in place. For the United States, the pressure is less economic and more political. American defense contractors expected this contract. Lockheed Martin, Pratt & Whitney and their congressional allies had spent years assuming Canada would eventually fall in line. That assumption is now gone. And the question being asked in Washington today is simple. If Canada walked away, who is next? But here is the problem nobody in Ottawa is saying out loud. Canada has just made a choice that cannot be easily undone. The Rolls-Royce engine is not interchangeable with American systems. The Gripen is not designed to slot into US lead strike packages the way the F-35 is. Canada is choosing a path that runs alongside NATO, but not always through Washington. That creates real friction. American commanders have spent 20 years building joint doctrine around F-35 interoperability. Canadian pilots flying a different platform will face integration gaps in coalition operations that no amount of goodwill can fully paper over. And what they didn't expect, what surprised even some of Carney's own defense advisors, was how fast Washington responded. Within 48 hours of the announcement, 2 US senators called for a review of intelligence sharing arrangements with Canada. A Pentagon spokesperson described the decision as a step away from alliance cohesion. And one senior White House official, speaking without attribution, called it the most consequential Canadian defense decision since the Cuban Missile Crisis. That reaction tells you everything. This was not supposed to happen. And the people who expected Canada to stay in line are now recalculating what their influence is actually worth.
When it comes to the Gripen, of course, we're really interested in seeing what can be done because there was an unsolicited bid that came up. 10,000 jobs is indeed a very interesting offer. So we have to look at what our military capabilities need and at the same time, what are the number of jobs created across the country. I know that Canadians want us to build.
Canada has made its choice. An engine built in Britain. A fighter assembled in Ontario. A strategy designed in Ottawa, not handed down from Washington. Mark Carney did not make this decision to provoke Donald Trump. He made it because the Arctic does not wait for political convenience, and Canadian sovereignty is not a talking point. It is a geographic reality that demands reliable tools, not borrowed ones. Whether this proves to be the right call will not be decided in press conferences or Senate hearings.
What we designed the system for is actually to be able to withstand the extreme max in terms of cold, so minus 40, minus 45. We should be able to land on a road on a full packed with ice, be able to turn around in 10 minutes.
It will be decided on frozen runways north of the 60th parallel, in temperatures that ground most aircraft, during patrols that most allies never fly. Canada will fly them. And for the first time in a long time, they will fly them on their own terms. The Arctic is changing. The alliances around it are changing. And the country that controls the air above the Northwest Passage may end up controlling far more than airspace. The question is not whether Canada made a bold move. The question is whether the rest of the world was ready for it.